Welcome everyone to another episode of Grow Your Mind, brought to you by Grow You Now. Today we have an incredible guest, Dr. Caroline Busanko. I'm going to give some introduction, and Dr. Caroline, I would like you also to introduce yourself and share specifically your area of expertise, service, and how there's a lot of correlation with that and the tech professionals that I help service as well. Tech culture, it demands as we push harder when things get tough. Work long hours, write more code, prove your worth, and then at the end of it all, stay resilient. So without further ado, Dr. Caroline, please introduce yourself to our audience, what you do, your expertise, and who you serve.
I am Dr. Caroline Busanko, registered psychologist. I started working actually with autistic kiddos probably in 1995, 96. My focus now is essentially emotion regulation, anything around how we manage our emotions, prioritizing how do we manage life, right? And being successful human beings. But it really comes down to that emotion regulation. And I have ADHD myself. I have children with severe ADHD. And so, a lot of my focus is also in that neurodivergent sort of world as well, because there's extra demands. And then the pressures of everything else going on. So that's really where the focus of my work is, in terms of how do we manage our emotions? How do we be resilient? That's my mission, really, is just getting the message out there, how we can just all be more resilient as, in our family, in our work, and in all the roles that we do.
So I have a few icebreaker questions.
Sure.
And I'd love to get your understanding so we can ease people into this. Dr. Caroline, as a psychologist who understands the overwhelmed brain, what are common misconceptions high achievers have about the word resilience?
Well, I think we confuse resilience with maybe grit, right? If I can power through, if I can work all weekend, work through, whatever it is and get this project done, hard working. But it's those gritty people who become workaholics, and they're usually the ones who get more stress. They fall faster, harder, and have a harder time recovering. We also believe that we need to be stoic, right? Not showing any emotion or being happy all the time, or just, being able to suppress that emotion and work through things as well, without feeling overwhelmed, without ever making mistakes, right? So we think that perfectionism. So we hold all of these things on a pedestal, but that's not what resilience is at all. I mean, resilience is about feeling all the feelings, but still being able to acknowledge them, cope, and do what we need to do. And resilience actually needs stress. When we look at the definition of resilience, it's the ability to adapt well to stress, to trauma, to significant sources or adversity, all of those things. And so a lot of it's the flexibility. How do we adapt to the changing world? Because there's a lot of things that are out of our control. And a big piece of it too is distress tolerance, which I don't think very many people are very good at, being able to sit with those uncomfortable feelings and tolerate corrective feedback, tolerating different opinions, being able to take that feedback and not get blamey, not argue why we're right. It's being able to learn from that experience. We know the most successful people are those who want that feedback, who are looking, tell me, how can I get better, right? Even top CEOs, they want to learn from those mistakes. They're looking for, how can I do a little bit better tomorrow? So, I think those are a few pieces anyway.
There are a few things that stand out a lot, and I want to do a double take on that. So for example, you talked about the correct definition of resilience. For me, at one point, I thought being uncomfortable with what makes me uncomfortable is my superpower. I kind of felt that it was my kryptonite because I put up with things that I shouldn't be putting up with. And then using the words you used, I went perhaps to the other extreme where I became hyper stoic and not emoting as much. So you have this smiling, bubbly person, and now you have this cold as steel individual who's like, wait, what's going on with person. Maybe it's a midlife crisis. I don't know. You know it better. You're the expert. But what is that healthy balance? And I think you kind of talked about it. So you need stress in order to have resilience. Where do people make the mistake where they have to power through? One is dogma. It's a badge of honor that you outwork everyone. You're first in the office, you're last to leave. I can operate with 4 hours of sleep and still get it done. What is a healthy way to look at this, in your opinion?
I think it's easy to talk about balance. We need to balance, but I don't
Hmm.
know if there really is balance in the world.
Hmm.
And I know, because when I'm in something, I'm in it, right? It's being able in the moment to understand this is my priority. But when we take a step back and look at the foundations of what's actually making us healthy,
Hmm.
right? There's setting events is kind of what we call them. So those setting events is what helps us be resilient for when stress hits. So, for example, sleep. If we don't have enough sleep, it doesn't matter. I mean, our brains aren't built, they're not very strong for willpower. Let's just say that, right? We can't rely on willpower because that's not a very strong part of our brain.
Hmm.
And so when we don't have enough sleep, and I know
Hmm.
people are probably rolling their eyes because we hear it all the time, but truly we are draining that battery, our resilience battery, our executive functioning battery, self-regulation battery. We become exhausted. So sleep for sure is important. Even things like
Hmm.
hydration. When we get
Hmm.
dehydrated, our body starts sending out more cortisol and that stress
Hmm.
hormones into the body.
Okay.
So
I'm
even
going
just little things like hydration. I know, yeah, like I've got two water bottles here. One's
to,
already empty.
there we
I've got
go.
another one here too. Like I'm just always constantly. So how do we set the environment up?
Hmm.
So I just have water everywhere, just to
I
help us
see.
with that. So these are some of those setting events, right? Deep breathing, people will give you all of these strategies to use in the moment. Well, in the moment is way harder. If you're proactive, you're proactively doing things. I
Hmm.
take long exhalations regularly throughout the day. I never do it when I'm stressed. When I'm stressed, I find deep breathing just stresses me out more, right? And
Hmm.
if someone's like,
Hmm.
just take a breath, you can't tell me to take a breath, like it just
Hmm.
triggers us. And so it's
Right.
being proactive, right? Exercise is another big one. We have to move. We have to move
Hmm.
our body. And so when we're looking at a healthy take of resilience, those are some of those foundational things that are going to make it easier for when we're actually, in the moment. Even just doing something different because our brain needs novelty. It's easy to get caught in a rut. So being able
Hmm.
to do fun things, right? Something novel, go roller
Hmm.
skating if you don't normally roller skate, go bowling, go
Hmm.
go do something different, be in nature. You know,
Hmm.
those little things can make all the difference in the world because we're relying, and that's the other thing. I think, we think that resilience and, grittiness is relying on our cognitive resources, but this is the
Hmm.
worst source to rely on, right? So we want to make sure that we're promoting other things. The other thing to think about, an easy one, is just our brain uses up like 25% of our calories and it runs on glucose. So just
Okay.
making sure that we are eating regularly throughout the day, right? So our brain is literally being fed. I mean, those things are really important too.
So for me personally, maintaining certain body weight, more importantly, visceral fat. And I'm noticing that I quit alcohol, I'm eating more healthier, I'm intermittent fasting, I'm hydrating. You saw that the missing link there was sleep. And I'm hearing that people like Usain Bolt and some of these top performers, they didn't just get 8 hours, they got maybe even 10, perhaps even 12 hours of sleep. And in one particular case, he literally woke up 35 minutes before getting onto the track and breaking the world record, is when he actually woke up, did that, and its sleep is a made component. So I'm adding that to my repertoire. It's not that badge of honor to say that I can work with a limited amount of sleep, because at the end of the day, we're biological beings. We're not aliens, the last time I checked. What advice do you have for them to get past these roadblocks, dogma, conditioning, what have you?
Well, I think we need to figure out what are our own boundaries. I mean, sleep is still one. I know it too, right? And
Uh-huh.
knowing it, we're all very intelligent people, right? We know it, but there is that gap between actually doing it. It's the point of performance, right? Doing what we
Mm,
actually know.
mhm,
And so part of it is figuring out what is getting in the way in the first place, right? What are your yeah buts? It's our yeah but, whatever
I
that
see.
is, right? A lot of people, it's time. But what we don't realize is we're draining that cognitive battery. And when we drain that, we're actually less productive. And there's so much research out there showing if you don't
Mhm,
sleep, like taking a break throughout the day, you're actually going to be more productive afterwards. But we get
mhm,
caught in these sort of distorted ways of thinking. I love using the example of studying. This is one that I
mhm,
used with students all the time. So let's say, you've got a
mhm,
big test to study for. And
mhm,
this is your long-term memory. This is all the information you need to know for the test. If you're
mhm,
cramming the night before,
mhm,
it's like trying to take a bathtub full of water and putting it into this little spout. I mean, it's going to overflow. You just,
mhm,
our cognitive capacity gets overwhelmed. It just can't do it. So it's just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit over time, right? And so when we look at the
right.
research, being able to take breaks, being able to rest, we actually see them more successful because their brain is rested, that
Mhm,
that they're able to keep their battery charged, so to speak. So I think that we need to figure out what is our yeah but and breaking
mhm,
down the steps. And sometimes it's just we get so overwhelmed, we just think we need to get 8 hours of sleep. Well, that's not
mhm,
actually true, right?
mhm.
And 8 hours, I
So,
would say, is not good. Our circadian rhythm is a 90-minute cycle. So 8 hours would be in the middle of a 90-minute cycle. You'll probably feel
mm,
exhausted if you're trying to wake yourself
mhm,
up at an 8 hour point. So you got to figure out what's good for you. But I would start with something easy. How do we break it down to what's one easy thing? Maybe not easy, but it's just setting
mhm,
that
mhm,
intention. And with sleep, I would say waking up the exact same time every single day. Because if we sleep in, sometimes it's just understanding. If we're sleeping in,
mhm,
we're essentially jet lagging our brain every
mm,
weekend if we're sleeping in on the weekends. And so we actually know people who sleep in, their brain, their cognitive functioning is very similar to people who are on shift work, right? Who have really erratic sort of sleep
mhm,
schedules and
mhm.
all of those types of things. So I do think that those are some of the things to think about, but it's
Wow.
usually making a plan, figuring out our yeah buts, what are
Right.
the obstacles.
I have two more icebreaker questions, if you don't mind. You work extensively with ADHD and anxiety. How do those traits uniquely show up as both superpowers and kryptonite?
The superpower of ADHD is when we are in a job that we actually
Mm-hmm,
enjoy, that we're invested in,
mm-hmm,
our nervous system and our brain, it's highly stimulated by things that are
mm-hmm,
interesting, things that are challenging. We can really
mm-hmm,
hyper focus, right? So
mm-hmm,
we can knock out, when we're interested and engaged, we can knock out massive amounts of work in a very short period of time.
mm-hmm.
There's the Parkinson's law. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
No, please educate
it's
us.
yeah, so it's essentially, however much time you have, you're going to fill it with
Mm-hmm,
what you need. So if you give yourself 2 weeks to finish a project, you're going to fill that whole 2 weeks. ADHDers and anxiety too. I mean, they can be very hypersensitive to the environment. So from an
mm-hmm.
evolutionary perspective, I mean, we are partially here because of the ADHD anxious people in the
Right,
world, but
right,
they can
right.
be really good problem solvers. They can, go through complex issues that stump everybody else and come to like a straight answer. So there's a lot of
Mm-hmm,
different things, just that intense achievement, that hyper focus, that
uh-huh,
perfectionism. So all of those things can be helpful. But as soon as something is repetitive, it's boring, I don't see the
mm-hmm,
point of it. It's somebody
mm-hmm.
else wants me to do it. It's their, priority. It's not mine. The brain literally shuts off. The brain
Mm-hmm,
stays on when there's that internal sort of motivation, right? There's that
mm-hmm.
stimulation. Brilliant problem solver, can do really complex tasks, but then can't remember to do a basic thing, like check their
Right,
email or their taxes or accounts payable.
uh-huh,
So that becomes a problem. When we're anxious, we're overly
mm-hmm,
sensitive to everything, right? There's this false alarm. And
Right.
so that can be really, now we're on edge. So of course we're not going to be able to focus on our work and to do the
Mm-hmm.
things that we
Mm-hmm.
need to do. That can become really impairing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a double-edged sword with both of those
It
things.
is. How do we do this at work where we might not have control over our managers? So if our managers judge us, if we are fish and they're judging us our ability to climb a tree, we face those consequences like you pointed out. What's your advice to deal with that at work?
First, we need to be aware of what are some of those stressors that are
Uh-huh.
kind of, going on. So for me, I know recently I've noticed there's a few things that people are like, I know in our meeting I mentioned this. Like, where is it?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I don't recall you ever. It's not about resilience or intelligence. It's about finding the right systems. And so
Mm-hmm.
we need to figure out for ourselves what we can do, but then also work with, what are some things that we can set up in the environment
Yeah. Uh-huh.
to help with that success.
Yeah, absolutely.